Well, week 2 of the preseason has wrapped up in the National Football League, and it's the most important week of the preseason where you can get some clues to help your fantasy team as drafts are going hot and heavy here in the month of August and certainly ramping up here towards the end of August. Cecil Lammey, Sigmund is on assignment today. And before I jump into the players and the 5 players and situations that can provide value for your fantasy team coming from these preseason games, I just want to tell you guys that preseason does matter. It doesn't mean everything, but you can assemble clues. So, for the crowd out there that's kind of ignoring what's going on or maybe not paying as close of attention, I would just say, all right, it's part of your data collecting when you are, building your fantasy roster, when you're building up things to go out and dominate your fantasy league. The preseason does matter in that way. So, watching these clues, assembling the training camp reports, watching Twitter, watching beat writers, news feeds, these are all things that you can use to your advantage when it comes to your fantasy draft. And by the way, we've got your articles and your training camp reports available at footballguys.com. So make sure to go and check that out there as well. We start in Baltimore because there's a couple of things here with Baltimore. And first and foremost, Isaiah Likely, the backup tight end, is not getting treated like a backup tight end at all. He hasn't played any preseason snaps. That's what you treat a first teamer like. That's how you look at it and you go, that guy's a starter, even though he's the backup to Mark Andrews. There will be enough to go around for both of them. Andrews with the more tight end one, Likely with the low end tight end one, high end tight end two with upside type of thing. And if anything happens to Mark Andrews, then of course Isaiah Likely catapults into top 5 fantasy tight end conversation. And Likely's always had the talent. He's a player I appreciated in college, a player that I was kind of disappointed when the Ravens drafted him because, again, Mark Andrews is there. I'd love to see him get the whole show himself. But clearly, Baltimore has intent to use him extensively and more than people are thinking right now. So, Mark Andrews, maybe you don't get him. You're looking for a tight end, a backup with great upside. Isaiah Likely's there because he's not really a backup tight end. Not saying it's going to be tight end by committee, but Likely's going to get used more, as is Zay Flowers. Just a little quick note on Zay Flowers there as well, because Flowers has been outstanding in training camp reports coming out of Baltimore. We know that Lamar Jackson continuing to grow as a passer, having an explosive weapon like Zay Flowers to go downfield with Likely, with, of course, Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry fitting well in terms of the culture fit for what Baltimore wants to do. Of course, King Henry's going to run you over. So the Ravens, there's excitement around there. Isaiah Likely, don't overlook him at all a little bit later in your drafts. We go to Buffalo. I'm going to be talking about some rookies here because that's a part of the cluster of players we're going to learn about are rookies. And the Keon Coleman situation is one to watch because if you look at Josh Allen and where he's going as the first or second fantasy quarterback off the board, well, who's he going to throw to? No Stephon Diggs. He's down in Houston. I'll get to those guys in just a little bit, but it looks like Keon Coleman, who's played 100% of the starter snaps in the preseason. He is the receiver to target. I do love Khalil Shakir. I certainly appreciate what they can do at the tight end spot in Buffalo. But if you're looking at big bodied wide receiver, and Coleman, a player that I had a first round grade on, I love talking to him at the combine. He's Mr. Personality for sure, but he's Mr. Confidence. And that confidence comes through on the playing field, and it's coming through in training camp for the Buffalo Bills. So again, rookie receiver, but with a dynamic superstar quarterback. And also Coleman, he's no James Hardy. It's an old joke for Bills fans, but he's a big-bodied receiver who can at least be a red zone target. So I'm not going to say 10 touchdowns because that seems a little bit outlandish, especially because he's a rookie. But if you're looking for a red zone target, you're looking for the target in Buffalo to go after at the wide receiver position, it is Keon Coleman. And again, it's his skill set, but it's also Josh Allen's skill set. And if they are trying to get Allen to maybe distribute things a little bit more, I'm not saying they're taking the ball away from him. James Cook obviously going to do a lot there on the ground and as a receiver out of the backfield. But if they're trying to minimize the hits that Josh takes, maybe rather than running in that touchdown inside the 10, maybe Allen throws up a jump pass to Coleman, and Coleman has the confidence, the my ball mentality, the size, and the strength to go get it there as well. 100% of the starter snaps in the preseason, that has been with Keon Coleman. He is the target at the wide receiver position in Buffalo that you need to be going after. Let's talk about some clarifying situations and running back 2 spots around this league. And for me, I look at Tampa Bay and I get excited about that offense. Certainly Baker the Baby Maker and all those receivers. But the running back position behind Rachaad White, like who's it going to be? It looks like it's going to be Bucky Irving instead of Chase Edmonds. So we're getting some more clarity. And then I think of Bo Nix because it is a Broncos show. But then I think of the way Bucky Irving was only one of 2 backs in the FBS to catch 50 plus passes. The other was Blake Watson. Again, Broncos show. But I think of what Bucky Irving can do and what Rachaad White can't do, or maybe tends to struggle a little bit more. Like White's their featured back by default, and this is nothing against him. I like his game. I've appreciated his game, but also can you be a little bit more dynamic the way that Bucky Irving is? Remember, he's kind of a slot receiver that plays running back. He can run routes like a receiver. He's got great hands, and he's incredibly explosive after the catch. So with Bucky Irving, it's like, just get him the ball. And so I think of, the declaration of influence in this league where you're going to spread out the field. You're going to have all your big targets. You're going to have your Mike Evans, you're going to have your Chris Godwin, and Baker can just do a simple little dump off to Bucky Irving, who could take it to the house. It can be a house call, 80 yards, 50 yards, whatever the number is. Like, that's the type of player that he is. And he is getting on the field as the number 2 running back. So Rachaad White is fine as a low end RB2 or flex play. But as a what the heck flex play, Bucky Irving could get on the field because, again, it's about maximizing your touches. Rachaad White clearly going to get the most touches in the Tampa Bay backfield. But the high value touches, the touches with the high pucker factor, if you will, for defenders out there trying to defend Bucky Irving, it's going to be tough for them to do. So Irvin is another one of those players. Again, training camp and preseason, you need to note all of these things and kind of compile it together. The drum beats get really loud. So what has been consistent for the offseason? How's it happen in training camp? What things are different? We're dealing with new information once training camp gets here, and the preseason is just another layer on that. The layer is there for Bucky Irving to be the man. Now to Houston, I said I'd get to the Texans here, and now it is time to talk some Texans football, but not about Stephon Diggs, not about the wide receiver position. Although we look at it with like a Tank Dell being the number 3 guy, super explosive guy, I just look at Joe Mixon in that backfield and I go, they need some help. Dameon Pierce is struggling. Drunk Joe Namath struggling. Dameon Pierce is struggling big time. And Cam Akers is likely to beat him out for the number 2 job behind Joe Mixon. Now, they've said it. One of the most consistent drum beats this entire offseason was Joe Mixon's going to get a heavy workload. Joe Mixon's going to get a heavy workload. Guess what Joe Mixon's going to get? If you can stay healthy, a heavy workload. So, all right. What about when he needs a breather? And Joe Mixon isn't exactly young. So what happens if he's a little bit banged up? Now, I have suggested that if I'm the Denver Broncos, I've got Samaje Perine. And the new information that we have, of course, because entering training camp, is it Samaje or Javonte to make the roster? Now it's clearly Javonte after he lost the weight. Again, new information. For the way to do, nice call on Javonte crowd. Genius. Yeah, okay. Well, when he was fat and overweight and sluggish in minicamp, and I was there, it looked like it would be him or Samaje because Samaje's been fine. This entire offseason, Samaje's been fine. First preseason game had a bobbled pass that turned into a pick for Jarrett Stidham. You'd like to get that back. But still, I'm thinking Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine, get the band back together. Make this happen. And if I'm the Broncos, I pick up the phone to the Texans and I just say, hey, well, you got a 7th rounder? You give us for Samaje Perine because Perine's not going to make the Broncos, or at least it seems like that. And Cam Akers is fine, I guess, and Dameon Pierce, who I understand had plenty of dynasty love, to be sure. His game has fallen off. So Mixon is there to be the centerpiece of their offense. The Texans' offense is one of the most exciting. You should be among the most excited for the Texans' offense, Chiefs' offense, Eagles' offense. We know the teams that you're targeting, that you're going after, and that's certainly one of them. In Houston, I'm thinking, all right, do you want Cam Akers? Do you want somebody that's more well-rounded in terms of maybe a Samaje Perine? So right now, Cam Akers is the backup to Joe Mixon. I don't know how many people would be handcuffing Akers to Mixon. Most likely you would just leave him on your waiver wire speed dial because, it's Cam Akers. He'd have some value if Mixon went down with an injury. But for me, he'd be limited in what he could do. It might be better for the Texans to throw a late round pick and go get Samaje Perine, somebody like that, right? And I know Dallas is circling around looking for running back help, although we don't know how the split. We don't know a lot of stuff in Dallas. Thanks, Jerry. But there's some teams out there. Dallas, I believe Houston would be one. They're going to be looking for running backs that you can trust. A guy like Perine, you could certainly trust on third downs. You can trust him as a receiver. You can trust him as a goal line runner, as a 2-minute back. Jaleel McLaughlin has taken that job from him this offseason in this training camp. It's clear McLaughlin is their 2-minute back. But I look at that situation in Houston and Dallas, and I go, you need better running backs. So who's getting cut around the league? Who could you add for a late round pick? Maybe send a day 3 pick to the Bears for Khalil Herbert, something like that. There's going to be some movement at the running back position. And I think Houston would be in line to do that because Cam Akers isn't really a great option behind Joe Mixon, who's going to get a heavy workload. Have you heard that before? But also at the same time, can he hold up to it? Can you find an improved backfield mate with him? I think Perine and Mixon would look pretty good down there in Houston, better what they've got right now. Now, to wrap up today's show, I have to talk about Rome Odunze. Before the draft, and again, it's something where Marvin Harrison Jr. was a perfect prospect, right? I compared him to Calvin Johnson. I can't really find much bad about his game. Maybe you want to be a little bit more explosive, but whatever. But Rome Odunze, if you had Rome Odunze as the number 1 receiver, and I know some teams that did, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. So watching the training camp reports and, being close to some Bears people there as well, Odunze's got it. And it won't be long before he's the number 2 receiver. DJ Moore is the man. There's no question. DJ Moore, he's our number 1 receiver. He's the guy. He's the man. He's awesome. Keenan Allen is there. But Rome Odunze has looked better than Keenan Allen. And Rome Odunze can make plays, establishing that chemistry with Caleb Williams, and it looks fantastic. Williams out there, Matt Waldman will always put out the tweets about he looks like Aaron Rodgers, right? He's not Pat Mahomes. Nobody's Pat Mahomes. Stop. But can he be an Aaron Rodgers? Yeah. Who's his Devontae Adams? It could be Rome Odunze eventually. Now, again, DJ Moore's still there, but do not sleep on Rome Odunze. He's soon to be wide receiver 2 on our offense that is going to be pretty dynamic with Caleb back there slinging it from all over the field and kind of just, winging it a little bit and doing their thing. So Rome Odunze, a player, much more excited even than Keon Coleman, who I mentioned, more like a 10th round wide receiver. Keon Coleman, fine in Buffalo. You're thinking more red zone. Rome Odunze is everything. He's a big play weapon. He can make, critical catches to move the chains. He is a red zone target because of his strength, the way he high points passes. He rips the ball away. Rome Odunze is incredibly impressive. Was in college, now is that way in the pros as well. So preseason drum beats and preseason buzz that you need to know about. We actually wrote about it at footballguys.com. So check us out and go there every day at footballguys.com. And we appreciate you for helping us out there. Sign up for our free daily newsletter every day, hot and fresh to your inbox with takes written by me, Bob Harris, Sigmund Bloom, Joe Bryant, Pretty damn good. We're there to help you with your fantasy teams. If you want to support the show, you love the Audible, first off, subscribe to all of our YouTube channels. We certainly appreciate that. But then subscribe to footballguys.com. That's all we ask. No silly super chats, nothing like that. We ask you, if you love the show, if you love the free daily newsletter, then subscribe to footballguys.com. You'll get tens of thousands of pages of information during the regular season to help you dominate your fantasy league. You're the hero, we're the guide. It's footballguys.com. I'm Cecil Lammey saying, thanks for watching. Watch these other videos. Appreciate you. Stay tuned. And would you please stay frosty?